They're mostly going to be testers, or
I think so, but I'm not sure. So you might want to ask about
Okay.
who's tester and who's from other disciplines. Goedemiddag, welkom bij Ordina. Ik ben Anko Tijman, partner van Ordina op het gebied van agile testen. Vanmiddag ga ik Gojko Adzic interviewen. Hij is bij ons om ons het een en ander te vertellen rondom het thema Tijd, voor het nieuwe testen. Hij gaat zijn verhaal vertellen over Sleeping with the Enemy. Hij heeft een boek geschreven, Bridging the Gap, en zijn nieuwe boek komt binnenkort uit, Specification by Example. En ik ga hem interviewen over wat hij te vertellen heeft.
Thank you, Anko. Hello, I'm Gojko, and I'm a consultant working mostly in strategic consultancy around software quality, and I'm the author of Bridging the Communication Gap and the upcoming book Specification by Example.
Hi Gojko. We have
Hello.
some questions about you and your work and about your book. The first is your book is about bridging the gap between the IT and business. And what do you think is the essence of the gap between IT and business?
I think it's caused by communication problems from both ends, and in particular if we talk about IT, I think that very often software teams try to engage business users at the wrong level. We try to get them to overspecify low-level details and to get them to give us details about a software solution rather than the problems they actually need to solve or some business needs they want to address. And I think that causes sort of this gap, because then they talk about one thing and we talk about another thing, and very often there's nothing in the middle to actually make sure that everybody understands each other.
And so we're misunderstanding each other as less as possible in the communication. But how can we overcome this gap of communication?
So I think one good idea is to try and engage business people and engage business users at the right level to talk about the things that they care about, not the things that the software needs to do. And the other is to try and use a consistent language. This comes from Eric Evans's work on domain-driven design, where he says that one of the biggest problems in software design is that very often the business people have a business jargon, technical people have a technical jargon, and a lot of things get lost in translation. So use one jargon. And another useful idea is to try and use examples of usefulness as a way to communicate. Examples are very good because they make things precise and they allow people to think about things at a much deeper level.
In your book, part of your advice on starting with agile acceptance testing is don't mention testing. It's nearly like don't mention the war. But don't mention testing. Can you clarify that?
Yes, so this is quite interesting actually, because I think one of the reasons why we need to get the business users involved is to get better understanding of what the system is supposed to do in order to develop and test it. But it seems that the business users don't want to get engaged in testing.
Why do you think they're not wanting to get engaged in testing?
Unfortunately, I think testing is considered as a low-value activity. So when I say low-value activity, I mean that people sort of think that has to be done, but that's why they hire the testers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a problem, because if you position something as testing, then they have testers for that, so let testers deal with that.
Yeah. Testers think of themselves as very important, but apparently the business doesn't think that. And how can testers change that attitude?
I think you're absolutely right. So testers do think they're very important. I do think that testers are very important, members of the team as anybody else. But testers are not sort of contributing to that position very much by positioning themselves very sort of isolated. A lot of testers I know tend to sort of think of themselves as gatekeepers of quality and people who want to work in isolation to do kind of independent verification. And they don't tend to communicate with the business users or developers that much. And I think working better, working closer with the business users, with developers, is one way testers can actually show how much value they bring to the table.
You have a background as a software developer, but you're very much reaching out towards the testing community, actually all throughout Europe. And what's the idea behind that?
My background is in delivering software. It's not in developing software.
Okay.
And software development or testing, they're just roles.
Yeah.
They're not job titles, although people have these job titles, but I sort of generally disagree with job titles like that. So I, from day one when I started programming, I was testing as well. And I'm sort of reaching out to testers, I guess, more because quality is somewhat holistic.
Yes.
And I think that in order to get the right quality, we can't just locally optimize programming or can't just locally optimize testing. We need to improve the process as a whole.
Yeah.
And I see sort of testers not using their skills or not using their sort of knowledge or power to the extent they could in quite a lot of teams. And that's one of the ways that we actually need to improve as an industry, because the shorter we get with our releases and iterations, and that's the general trend. So a couple of years ago the norm was to release every 6 months or even a few years, 10 years ago. So now we're getting into, a couple of years ago we had maybe 2-week iterations. There's a lot more emphasis on continuous delivery and releasing every few hours, with sort of some teams now doing that. And I think integrating all the activities around testing in very short periods of time requires people who have expertise in that, and requires that these people are better engaged with the rest of the teams. So that's my mission for the next few years, is help better integrate people who have this sort of knowledge around validating the product and have this knowledge about actually understanding what the product is supposed to do from a critical perspective, because that's crucial for successful delivery.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you.